Well, I shall just try and tie this all up for you so we can all get our trains home as well. Since Tate's managed the Hepworth site, the sculpture team have had a presence there and an ongoing maintenance and research programme, and that still carries on. And although we do focus on particular projects, the conservation team as a whole has more of a holistic approach now to the garden, embracing the artworks, the environment, the plants, the social history around the site. So balancing the old and the new, the restored and the conserved, and trying to do the practicalities of condition checking, environmental monitoring, cost assessments, etc., without impacting on the aesthetics of the site. So the sculptures are a high priority, and managing both the physicality and the aesthetics are an annual task, and we've had that theme running through many of the talks from the conservators here. And the original patterns do get worn with the exposure to the coastal environment there and the touch of the visitor. And currently these are maintained with waxes, again, which we've heard across the different talks. And here you can see river horn before and after. And obviously the benefit of waxes are they're relatively easy to remove. Having said that, we're still carrying on research and discussions into chemical patternation. And this is constantly ongoing, as there may be a time where either the Hepworth sculptures or other sculptures in Tate collections may need that level of intervention. So we have set up training for the team with an experienced patterner, Paul Joyce, and that's been really great for the teams. You see Melanie touched on that, looking at the range of colours that can be produced. But what we also learned from that is the skill and the nuance of the patternator is without exception. I mean, it's just amazing what they can do. And also obviously what they do and don't know. And actually Paul did say that some of the yellows, pinks and purples and the bright blues quite hard to create and recreate consistently. And they don't last that long outside, which is probably maybe why we're not seeing them, and it corresponds with what Lindsay's been noticing with the pieces. Again, Foursquare walkthrough, conserved by Patterner Art, which brought Lindsay, Laura and Tessa together to work on this. And again, this was fantastic because we were able to use this as an opportunity for the newer members of the Conservation Tate team to work alongside the experienced practitioners. So, you know, as a team, I like to, or as the team and as the manager of the team, I like to bring this together and so that we can collaborate and have partnerships. So we can bring knowledge into the team and share knowledge out of the team, but also most importantly, obtain the best treatments and care for the objects as well. And prior to the treatments, research discussions undertaken and the agreed or desired outcome, and also for understanding what the ongoing maintenance will be, because obviously that then has to be drawn into the Tate conservation team, and it has to be something that is manageable going forward. We also look at areas of security, so we like to make sure the artworks are secure, for safety, but also for the public and most importantly for the artwork. And we try and do this in the most unobtrusive manner, and often using the original lugs and securing bolts and plates underneath the sculptures. And this is generally done for the smaller sculptures, but recently we've had to extend that out to some of the larger sculptures, simply because the garden and the sculptures are so popular with some of our younger groups and school groups that they are much more interactive with the sculptures than we might imagine. So we have rolled out some of the securing to the larger pieces as well. And touched on the string twine discussion. So to try and keep the authenticity and elements of research and just practicality, the team, and particularly one of my technical team, have become very interested in twine making, and we have purchased the equipment, and we're thinking of buying some more equipment. And they've been busy making twines and coming up with different thicknesses, etc. And also we're starting to look at the colouring of those, could they be dyed, etc. So an area that is still in its early stages and obviously has great potential for any collaborative ideas or further research in that area. And in relation to the studios, I've just started to have an internal discussion with other conservation managers, in particular the paper conservation manager, about the paper ephemera from the card boxes, some of which are losing their physical strength to hold their contents together, to newspapers that are used as lining under the sculptural pieces, and of course the labels. So really wanting to start to consider and bring a discussion together around how best to support this material in situ. Are we looking at replication? Are we looking at replacing, documenting and archiving? And obviously, that's a much wider discussion than just the conservation team. And so, a briefing note will be brought together, and then that will start to be discussed within the Hepworth Tate steering group, and then wider as required. And again, some people, occasionally, certainly when we talk to the public, they think, oh, well, it's only a cardboard box, but actually it's a part of the site, and it's important to understand how we keep that there. And we've also started to focus on the external marbles, as over the years with overgrowth of shrubbery, algae, and the natural weathering the marbles, they had become darkened. So in 2017 and 2018, we set up a programme of cleaning them, and we tried to do this as a gradual phased approach, so it didn't seem so much of a shock to the public or anyone else coming into the garden, and also so that we could gauge opinion from everyone as to what level of cleaning we were looking at. And so now the team are looking into researching fungicides and algicides, because of course you've got to keep on top of this maintenance now, and it'd be nice to have longevity between the physical cleaning of each of the marbles, so we don't want to go in every year and be actively cleaning. And in 2016, the summer house came under the spotlight for assessment. And since being placed in the garden, obviously the maintenance over the years waxed and waned, and it had got to the point where the gravel path had encroached under the summer house, so that in fact all the moisture was simply wicking from the gravel up into the bottom of the base of the wooden summer house. And there's obviously some deterioration going on, and it takes the back of it takes a lot of the brunt of the weather that comes in from the sea. So I carried out an assessment, and I felt that a lot of it was in good condition. Got a second opinion from a specialist, and thankfully they were in agreement that maybe the back and some of the lower edges that had wicked the moisture up were in the poorer condition, but the rest was effectively sound. So after a discussion with the Hepworth steering group, it was agreed that we could go ahead with a conservation restoration project of the summer house, and the whole thing was dismantled because it is effectively a flat pack just bolted together. So although we had to cut through the bolts because they were seized, it did still become a flat pack. And I think you can see on the right hand side as well, when we got to the point of lifting up the floor, we found the original turning mechanism. Unfortunately, that was completely corroded, but at least we had the visual of that. So the whole piece was stripped back. You can see we had a whole new back made, and it was difficult to get from a supplier the exact size, tongue and groove, so that was actually cut up and sawn to match the original. The floor was reinforced, and we put new wheels on in exactly the same position, And instead of putting a turning circle in again, we used the concrete turning circle that had remained, and the new wheels simply run on the turning concrete, on the concrete substrate. So the summer house does have the ability to turn again, which in some respects is going to be helpful with maintenance going forward, because in theory we can now twist all sides round and work on it rather than actually go into the bushes and disappear around the back and try and work on it. It does, however, mean that we've created another layer of maintenance for ourselves, which is fine. So we have a regular maintenance program that goes on, and then every 3 to 5 years, the whole summer house will be stripped and sanded back and repainted. And finally, we've also taken this similar sympathetic restoration conservation approach to the gardener's cupboard in the greenhouse, which had lost all its structural strength due to a woodworm infestation that had been living there for many years. And literally it got to the point where you just needed to look at it or take the formica off the top, and the sides just fell away from it. So again, luckily, when we were down there looking at this, we actually had Sophie down, so we were able to get an opinion straight away, look at the original structure, see how it could be remade. And again, we got a local carpenter to remake it. And because the doors on the left were a replacement sometime late 80s, early 90s, but we could see the internal structure and how the doors and cupboards would have been. Again, we put it back to its original kitchen cupboard style, and in fact is now again used by Jody the gardener to keep all the gardening pots and his watering equipment, etc. in there. And we are now looking at the Harry Batoya diamond chairs to see if we can fundraise to get those restored, because we will have to send over to Italy to have those basically remade. They heat form the seats and actually adhere the fabrics on them on site there. So we have sourced some original fabrics that match the same material, cotton mix, and we have shown those again to the steering group and to Sophie to make sure they're the right colour and shades and weave, so we get a good match. So now all I'm just waiting for my funding now. But again, that just will help the public as well to enjoy the general social history of the site as well as the sculptures, and see and potentially use the chairs that Hepworth chose. So as well as that, we're also looking at reviewing textiles on site. So the candlewick bedspread that's on the bed in the summer house has already been conserved, and currently there's a replica on the bed, certainly over the winter period. And we're going to be starting a discussion and looking at the net curtains in the summer house, because they just look like standard nets, but they're really quite beautiful with little red polka dots on them. It was mentioned as well, some of the fancy dress costumes. We have just had the Juno fancy dress costume, again conserved and restored, and that has been mounted on a mannequin permanently so that it's ready to come out whenever requested or to be looked at and viewed. And again, maybe because it was stored in the Palais, if the Palais wanted to do a fundraising drive, it's ready to go down there and be positioned and viewed. So this is hopefully giving you a whistle-stop tour of the conservation team's fairly wide remit, and obviously with everything that Barbara Hepworth has and her archive, it's quite a wide remit to help preserve the legacy that she's actually started and that everyone is using for their research. So there you go, that's it.